The 2023 Honda CRV. This is the all-new 6th generation CRV, and this is a product that has been redeveloped from the ground up. So what do you need to know? Well, first off, because this is Savage Geese, we're almost a year late to this vehicle, so we're going to be covering the pros and cons and why we think this is probably the best mid-size CUV currently sold. Let's start with the exterior and interior usability of this vehicle. With exterior styling, this is not revolutionary, this is not the most exciting looking vehicle, but it is modern enough. I really do think this is going to look good for many years and not a vehicle you're going to be ashamed to be seen in. Its really only con from an exterior perspective, other than being somewhat generic, is there's a little bit too much unpainted black plastic. From an interior perspective, that's where this CRV really shines. Let's start with usability and ergonomics first. You have a big hatch area. It has a big wide opening with a low load floor. With the rear seats up, you're looking at about 36-ish cubic feet of cargo capacity. And with the rear seats down, it's like 75, 76 cubic feet. This thing is a big bread box, so you have a big wide opening, and it's a very flexible cabin space. Rear seat usability. There's a tilt function to the rear seats, which make them extra comfortable. In this sport touring trim level, the leather seats are surprisingly breathable, and you have about 0.6 extra inches of legroom in this generation CRV, which do go a long way. This is a car where a full-size adult can fit behind you with no issues, and there's a good bit of headroom. Next, the front seats. This is the current generation of Honda seat. They'll talk your ear off about how the seat structure is very good, and to be honest, they're right. It's extremely comfortable. There's good range of seating positions or seating adjustment, so you can get this thing up nice and high or very low if you're a taller driver. Good amount of headroom in this car and excellent visibility. There are essentially no blind spots in this generation CRV. The steering wheel falls right to hand, and all of the controls in this car are predominantly physical. And as Mark will happily tell you about, it has the tactile clickiness that you're looking for. Your HVAC controls and all that other fun stuff are lifted out of things like the HRV, Civic, and Accord. This has the identical, essentially, dash layout of all Hondas, and it carries its pros and its cons. Not everybody likes the way this thing looks, but I do think it looks a class above when it comes to price. And thankfully, they've ditched the majority of their piano black. There's a piano black strip on the dash itself, but you really never touch it. All of your controls and all the plastics around it are a nice matte texture when it comes to storage in the front of this vehicle. Big door pockets, big center armrest area, and if you have the Touring, you get a wireless charging pad, but the space around it near the shifter is enough to store a phone and some sunglasses. This is just a very usable car. It's not quite as big, of course, as something like a Pilot, but you and your family could drive this every single day as long as you don't have like 40 kids, and you should be fine. What else to talk about? Well, there's the Bose audio system. While this car is definitely quieter than the Civic, particularly at the higher trim levels, the audio system itself doesn't sound quite as good as the Civic's Bose audio system, and that's due to the inherent design nature of a CUV. There's more reflective surfaces. What else? Price. This thing is just in line with about everything else. It starts in the very, very low 30s, high 20s, and this sport touring hybrid starts in the very high 30s, almost $40,000. Now, with all of that summarized, let's head in the shop and put this thing up on the lift. Mark, we're underneath the 2023 Honda CRV, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we're late to this thing. So we're gonna do our best to hit the key technical points. Let's start with body structure. This is on the latest small car platform that Honda uses with their Civic, HRV, and then their Accord. Essentially, the big benefit to this is it's more rigid. It's 15% more rigid than the prior generation CRV, which means less NVH, makes its way into the cabin, and it handles better. It has a much longer wheelbase and a significantly wider track for a class vehicle like this. The steering rack is more rigid. It's mounted differently for more direct steering. And on the highest trim levels, they add even more sound deadening. So the regular CRV is already quieter, much quieter than the prior generation vehicle, and much like in their other Honda products, if you go to the very highest trim level, they add even more sound deadening material. The other thing is the Ace body structure. This has their latest generation of their crash structure, which makes this and the Pilot, and the MDX, of course, some of the safest family SUV CUVs currently on the road, and that is a big priority for a vehicle like this. along with improved packaging. So you have 0.6 more inches of legroom for the rear occupants and a bigger cargo space altogether. With the rear seats down, you're looking at about 75 cubic feet of cargo capacity, which makes this a very big, very usable CUV. Mark, tell me about drivetrains.
So you have two drivetrain options. You have the 1.5 turbo with the CVT. The CVT has been updated. The belt drive has been reinforced. There's a lot of technical improvements that are there, but it's the same thing we've seen on most of their cars. The 2-liter Atkinson engine has been updated as well. It's one of the most efficient engines in terms of airflow of anything Honda's ever produced. But that engine is there to be paired with a hybrid drivetrain, which is now updated to their 4th generation dual motor design. And the big thing with it is the electric motors are now side by side. What that allows them to do is also add a low speed clutch where the gasoline engine can engage at lower speeds and just get you off the line seamlessly. And it also allows the high-speed clutch to work at higher speeds. So with the CRV Sport, you can go up to 115 miles an hour. So it balances out the smoothness between that transition. But that gasoline motor is low horsepower. It is there primarily to charge the battery pack. One of the electric motors is also dedicated to charging the battery pack, and you have one propulsion motor that generates like 160 something horsepower and more torque. So that electric motor is doing a majority of the work. However, it can recouple through those clutches. The gasoline engine, they're not always separated, but they can be separated, but they can combine to use the gasoline engine as well. Because you have those two electric motors, it also eliminates, the way they've designed it, eliminates the need for a traditional transmission. So no torque converted automatic and no CVT here. So it is a variable transmission. We called it a CVT before. It is continuously varying itself. It is the electric motors doing it. That's why they call it the direct drive. So those changes, along with the big changes to the internal combustion engine there and the way that they've programmed it, is ultra smooth. It is a very unique design. Namely, when you talk about Honda and hybrids of the past, they had a black eye from hanging onto the IMA stuff, having battery pack issues. This is a complete rework, and this latest generation is a huge change from their previous one. It is quite an amazing setup, and the fuel economy is good too. It's just, you know, again, it's newer, so we'll see how it ages out, but they are planning to put this in every single one of their cars. The hybridization is the future here.
Yeah, and you can get this vehicle as either all-wheel drive, which is on demand, or still as a front-wheel drive vehicle.
Yes,
it's truck
even with the
multi-wheel
hybrid.
Yep.
Yeah, the hybrid allows you both front and all-wheel drive, which the Accord doesn't have. That's front-wheel drive only, but they have the flexibility, and they have designed this to scale out across their entire lineup, or a variation of it.
So Mark, with that, let's go take this for a quick drive.
All right. Jack, let's talk about it.
Mark, there's nothing to talk about. This classic car is about as exciting.
It's breeding alpacas?
No, that actually sounds pretty damn exciting. Now, this is about as exciting as waking up and finding there's some crust around your mouth and having to wipe it away. That's this level of car to me. They all feel the damn same. They're all boxes. They're all driven by people who rather be tip-tapping away on their phone.
Yeah.
So, this is not an inspiring class of vehicle, and this is the best one in the class.
Okay, let's talk about let's just change the reality here. If we got out of this car and parked it on the pavement,
yes,
and I walked you around it and there was a bow tie on the front, Jack would be like, oh, the f***ing engineers! Oh my God, they spent 3 days.
Well, see, if this was a Blazer red line, I would, my pants would be so incredibly tight, I wouldn't be able to get up. But this is a CRV hybrid. And being honest, as we talked about it, or I talked about in the beginning of this video, it's the best one in the class. It's the most refined, it has a good interior space, it has the clickiness that I know you lust after, all the switchgear. It feels like a big, tall Civic. And because it feels like a big, tall Civic, it feels like a great economy-ish, this is like over 40 grand, but, you know, mid-sized CUV. It's a really refined, comfortable place with a good drivetrain, good suspension tuning, great usability. There's nothing not to like about this thing.
I will not argue with you that this class of vehicle is turned into the most paint drying, watching paint drying type style. They're so played out. There's a gajillion of them on the road. They all look the same. They're all very uninspiring emotionally. However,
yes,
this is the best the best implementation of it. And I say that, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with this. Like, if you had to put me in a SUV that had great packaging, great interior, great driving dynamics, great fuel efficiency at almost 40 or thereabout, it's quiet, it's comfortable, you turn your brain off, it's got a good audio system for this class. They put so much effort into this thing that it doesn't feel as NPC. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel as soulless because everything works in here so well. And if you're a normal person, like I'm thinking about what would be my daily runabout if I didn't have a Civic, which, you know, this is the Civic, right? I mean, if you like the Civic, this is everything plus more usability, the higher ride height, the all-wheel drive stuff, the fuel efficiency. It's great. It really is great. There's nothing to complain about other than...
It's quieter than a RAV4.
Yeah.
It gets less rattly drivetrain stuff than the hybrid RAV4s. It has a nicer interior space than a RAV4. You don't have the VW BS in the Tiguan. You don't have to deal with Hyundai or Kia dealerships and those piles. This does everything really, really well.
Let's get into the final thoughts, Jack.
All right, Mark, let's do it. That was incredible. Let's slap high fives, Mark.
Final thoughts on the CRV Sport Hybrid. And yes, these vehicles, you know, they're so commodity, they're so mainstream that they're not that exciting. And they're not trying to be. What they're trying to do is service you in terms of being that perfect appliance. How have they done this formula here? And the recent generation of Hondas are really, really good. Nobody argues that. The Civic, the HRV, the new Pilot, they're all really, really good. I think they finally figured out how to do this well, where you get in it, you drive it, and you like it, and there's like nothing to complain about. And anything that is there to complain about, you can complain about it with every single commodity vehicle. You know, this is not a vehicle where you're going to feel like an alpha driving it, but it's one of those that over time, the more time you spend with it, you really appreciate how well thought out the daily usability of it is. There is almost no gimmicks on the interior. Everything's physical. The technology is not overbearing. The space, the thought to ergonomics, the usability, it's a highlight. And it's something, if you're looking for this as a family vehicle, it gives you a peace of mind that you're not having to overthink it. It's something that the RAV4 has done really well, although this makes the RAV4 feel really old at this point, and that's what I would say. If you're looking at this class of vehicle, put it on your list as one of the first things to drive. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.